Welcome to Echoes of Love. Tonight, we're diving into a tale of passion, betrayal, and the thirst for revenge that will leave you questioning everything. But be warned, once you step into this world, there's no turning back. If you're hooked, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story of love and vengeance. And if you have your own, share it in the comments. We might just turn your real-life tale into a video, with your name featured. Let's dive in. I should have known from the start. I should have known I was making a mistake when I chose Ethan Hale, a man who never truly saw me. Not really. He had this look about him, a cold, distant kind of charm that I mistook for something deeper. But I was blinded by love, or maybe it was just the idea of love. When Emily, my little sister, had begged me for Ethan, I thought, what harm could it do? She was always my darling, always getting everything she wanted, and I, foolishly, always gave in. But that day, the day of my engagement, when Emily stole my gown and stood before me, tears staining her face, I knew I had made a mistake. She looked at Ethan, and I watched her helplessly. She thought she could win him over the same way she won everything else in her life. But this time, I didn't back down. I can't give him to you, Emily, I told her, my voice steadier than I felt. Ethan, standing beside me, said nothing, only smiling faintly. Sorry, he murmured. I remember that moment so clearly, the pity in his eyes. I should have left right then, walked away from it all, but I stayed. The truth was, I was in love with the idea of him, and Emily's eyes, full of hurt, made me think I could be the woman he wanted. But deep down, I already knew it wasn't me he loved. A few years passed after that. The engagement turned into marriage, and marriage became a slow descent into misery. I gave everything to him, my heart, my soul, my career, everything. I thought I could win his affection, that maybe if I gave him the life he wanted, he would look at me with warmth, with love. But instead, he showed me nothing but indifference. He only cared when I brought in profits for the Hale Group. The coldness in his eyes never faltered. I poured myself into business, trying to fill the void, but the harder I worked, the more invisible I became. Even when I was ill, feverish with an aching body, he barely noticed. But Emily always did. She always found a way to worm herself into his life. The moment I became pregnant, I watched in horror as Ethan held her when she had a fever, his face contorted in panic. I couldn't even get him to look at me when I was suffering, hemorrhaging during childbirth. The bitter taste of betrayal burned my throat, and that was the moment everything changed. The next thing I knew, I was gone. My life, my child gone. But when I opened my eyes again, I was back at the engagement banquet, standing there, staring at Emily Stone wearing my wedding gown, the one I had spent so many months picking out, the one that had once symbolized my future with Ethan. She was wearing it, and my heart sank. Her face was red from crying, her eyes pitiful, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe. But when I looked down, I realized my hand was still tightly holding Ethan's. Just like in the past, I was right back where I started. But this time, everything was different. I knew what was going to happen. I had lived it once before. This time, though, I wouldn't be passive. I wouldn't let them walk all over me. I looked at Emily with cold eyes, my grip tightening around Ethan's hand. Just kidding. If Emily wants something, how could her big sister not give it to her? The words stung, but it was the truth now. This wasn't my life anymore. Not the one I had been living. Both Ethan and Emily froze. I watched as Emily's face lit up with that familiar joy, the joy she always got when she thought she won. She thought she could get everything I had, but she didn't know. She didn't understand how hard I had fought for everything, how much I had sacrificed. The Hale family was crumbling, and she thought marrying Ethan would make her a queen. But the truth was, without me, without my work, she wouldn't even know how to run a business, let alone save it. Ethan's eyes flickered, and he quickly masked his emotions. Grace, this isn't fair to you, he said, and I couldn't help but laugh. Fair? It wasn't fair that I spent years of my life, of my love, on a man who never cared for me. But here I was, letting go of everything for Emily's sake. Whoever the Haler marries, it's still a Hailstone alliance, I said with a smile that made Ethan's lips twitch. Isn't my sister also part of the Stone family? Emily's joy was palpable. But behind that joy was a fear she couldn't hide. She wasn't as naive as she pretended. She knew the Hale Group was on its last legs, and if she thought marrying Ethan would secure her future, she was wrong. She would never have the strength to save what was left of the Hale legacy. Ethan placed the ring aside, his eyes already shifting toward Emily. This ring was made to Grace's size, he said, trying to keep his cool, but his voice was strained. I'll order another one for you later. His words hung in the air like a heavy cloud. Emily, with her perfect smile, looked at me as if she had won, as if the battle was over. But it wasn't. And then, everything clicked into place. In my past life, I had let Ethan go. I had handed him over to Emily, never questioning why he was so indifferent to me. But now I saw the truth. I had chosen the wrong man, and this time, I wasn't going to make that mistake again. You've always wanted him, Emily, I said, my voice laced with ice. You can have him, but remember, once you take the Hale legacy, there's no going back. You won't know what to do with it. Emily's face fell, the mask of sweetness cracking for just a second. She hadn't expected this, but I had expected her to take everything she always did. The difference now was that I was no longer the one who would lose. And for the first time, I felt the warmth of my own resolve. A voice in the back of my mind told me that I was wrong, that I was playing a dangerous game. But I didn't care. There was something deeply satisfying about watching Emily squirm as the truth settled into her bones. She didn't deserve what she was about to inherit, and I wasn't going to let her have it. Ethan and Emily both looked at each other, a silent exchange passing between them. The man I had once thought was my husband was now nothing more than a pawn in Emily's hands, and I could see it in his eyes. But I wasn't about to let him go without a fight. Grace, he said again, his voice barely a whisper, but this time, I saw something in his eyes, a flicker of regret. Or maybe it was just the weight of my indifference. Whatever it was, I didn't care anymore. I had spent too many years trying to earn his love. It was too late. Emily was giddy with the promise of what she had won. But she didn't realize what she had taken on. The Hale group wasn't some simple inheritance. It was a war, a battlefield that had claimed everything I had. She had no idea how much work it would take to rebuild the empire that had been my burden. As the night dragged on, I felt something shift inside me. I was no longer the woman begging for Ethan's attention. I was no longer the sister who always gave in. I had a plan now, and this time, I would be the one in control. I watched as Emily beamed, thinking she had won, but I could see the cracks in her facade. The smile, so forced, couldn't hide the anxiety beneath. She had just inherited a poisoned legacy, one she had no idea how to manage. She thought she was going to be the queen of the Hale Empire, but all I saw was a child playing with fire. Ethan's eyes flickered between me and Emily, a mixture of guilt and frustration passing over his features. He couldn't hide the truth anymore. He never cared for me. And yet, he still stood there, silent, watching as Emily savored her victory. But I wasn't about to let him have the satisfaction of seeing me broken. Not anymore. I'll give it to you, Emily, I said, my voice colder than I felt. I'll let you have Ethan, the ring, the Hale legacy. But know this: what you've just inherited isn't what you think it is. It's not a crown, it's a curse. You'll see. I could feel the sting of the words as they left my lips, but they were the truth. She wasn't strong enough to carry the weight of the empire. The thought that she could easily handle the responsibility made me almost laugh. I had built Hale Group from the ground up, pouring everything into it: my time, my energy, my heart. I was the one who had saved it when it was on the brink of collapse, and she had no idea what she was getting into. But what hurt the most wasn't just Emily's naivety. It was the way Ethan had always looked at her, like she was the better sister, the one worth fighting for. I had sacrificed so much for him, and yet, he had never truly loved me. I had poured my love and my efforts into a marriage that was never real. And now, I was walking away, leaving it all behind. I turned and walked away from them, my heart pounding in my chest, the weight of everything I had just given up pressing down on me. I wasn't sure if I was ready for this new chapter, but I knew I couldn't stay in this toxic environment. The Hale family, the Stone family, they were nothing but a trap, a cage that had suffocated me for years. It was time to break free. That's when I saw him, Jordan Hale, standing in the corner, watching everything unfold with a quiet intensity. I hadn't expected him to be here, but somehow, I wasn't surprised. He always seemed to be lurking in the background, waiting for the right moment. I didn't know what drew me to him. Maybe it was the way he never judged me, never treated me like I was a failure. Maybe it was the cold determination in his eyes that mirrored mine. I had always thought of Jordan as the illegitimate son, the one who had no place in the Hale legacy. But now, seeing him standing there, something clicked. I walked towards him, the weight of my decision heavy in my chest. The others didn't matter anymore. Jordan, I said, my voice trembling slightly, marry me. The words came out before I could even think, and I regretted them the moment they left my lips. But at the same time, I couldn't take them back. Not after everything I had been through, not after all the betrayal, the rejection, and the heartbreak. Jordan looked at me, his brow furrowing in confusion. You want to marry me? He asked, his voice low. There was no mocking, no derision, just a quiet curiosity. I nodded, not knowing what to say next. I wasn't asking for love, I wasn't even sure if that was possible between us. But I needed him. I needed someone who would understand the weight of what I was carrying, someone who knew what it was like to be rejected, to be discarded. His lips curved into a smile, but it wasn't warm. It was cold, calculating. You know I'm a bastard, right? I don't have a share in the Hale fortune. Marrying me won't end well for you. His bluntness hit me like a slap, but it also grounded me. I had spent so long trying to prove my worth to others, especially to men like Ethan, that I had forgotten what it was like to be honest with myself. Jordan didn't offer me a future full of luxury or fame. He offered me something else, a chance to live life on my terms, not on someone else's expectations. I don't care about your family's fortune, I said, my voice steady now. I just want to make sure I don't make the same mistake again. Jordan's eyes darkened, and for a moment, I thought he might walk away. But instead, he took a step forward, his gaze never leaving mine. He reached out and took the ring from my hand, slipping it onto my finger with a cold laugh. You're insane, he muttered. But I saw the flicker of something else in his eyes, something that hadn't been there before. It was a small victory, but it was mine. As Jordan walked away, I could feel the tension in the air, the shift in the way the others were looking at me. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was invisible. The night went on, but it was no longer about Emily and Ethan. It was about me and the choices I had made. The people I had once tried to please no longer mattered. I had chosen Jordan not because I loved him, but because I saw something in him that no one else did. A fire, a determination that matched my own. The next few months passed in a blur. The Hale empire continued to crumble, but this time, I wasn't there to pick up the pieces. Emily tried to manage it, but she couldn't. Without me, the Hale legacy was just a pile of rubble. I was free from that burden, but not without consequences. Jordan was different than I had imagined. Cold, distant, and calculating, but there was a side to him that no one saw. A side that I came to understand as I spent more time with him. He wasn't the enemy I had once thought he was. He was a man just like me, forced to fight for a place in a world that didn't want him. We formed an alliance of sorts, not one based on love, but on necessity. Together, we rebuilt the small company my father had left me, and it didn't take long for it to grow. The business world is ruthless, but I knew how to play the game. Jordan was the perfect partner. He had the connections, the drive, and the ambition to make us both successful. But even as we rose to the top, I couldn't forget the past. I couldn't forget how my family had discarded me, how they had used me until I was no longer useful. And I couldn't forget how Emily had stolen everything from me. Without a second thought, the taste of betrayal still lingered on my tongue, but it no longer had power over me. I had reclaimed my life, my business, and my future. And this time, I wasn't going to let anyone take it from me. The months passed, and with each day, Jordan and I built something together. It wasn't love, but it was respect, mutual respect. For the journey we had both taken to get here. We had both been discarded, both underestimated, and both driven by the need to prove everyone wrong. The business we created flourished, but something darker was always lurking beneath the surface, a sense of unease that I couldn't shake. I had no intention of going back to the Hale family, nor the Stone family, the world I had once tried so desperately to fit into those circles of power, influence, and wealth. It no longer appealed to me. I had found something else, something I had never expected to find. A life where I wasn't being used, a life where I could stand on my own, with no one to manipulate me or drag me down. But the past, as it always does, came knocking at my door. One day, when I thought everything was finally settling into place, a phone call changed everything. My secretary, Lily, called with urgency in her voice, something I had never heard from her before. President Stone, you need to come quickly. It's about Emily and Ethan. A chill ran through me. I had cut ties with them, but the reminder of what they had done to me, of how they had betrayed me, twisted my insides in ways I didn't want to feel. I didn't waste any time. Jordan was with me when I received the call, and I didn't have to explain. He simply nodded, grabbing his jacket and walking with me out the door. The tension between us was palpable, but this was no time for games. I could feel the weight of the past creeping back into my life, and I had no intention of letting it consume me again. By the time we arrived at the scene, the situation was already chaotic. Emily, Ethan, and the Hale family were in the midst of a scandalous argument, their voices rising in a cacophony of anger, regret, and accusations. The truth was unraveling in front of everyone, and I was just a spectator in a drama I never asked to be a part of. I watched from a distance as Ethan's face twisted with guilt. He had never loved me. He had never seen me for who I was. And now, in front of everyone, he was just another man trying to salvage whatever dignity he had left. But it wasn't just about him anymore. It was about me, what I had become, what I had fought for, and how far I had come since that night at the engagement banquet. I stood at the edge of the room, silent, watching, letting them tear each other apart. They were drowning in the consequences of their choices, and I wasn't going to throw them a lifeline. Not this time. Grace, Emily called out, her voice shaky. Please, don't let this happen. She was standing there, pleading, but I could see the manipulation in her eyes, the same look she had always given me when she wanted something. Now she was the one begging, but I had nothing left to give. Not to her, not to Ethan, not to anyone. The chaos between them escalated quickly, with accusations flying about deceit, betrayal, and greed. But I wasn't fazed by it. I had been through this before. I had been betrayed, humiliated, and discarded. The pain of the past no longer had control over me. Now, it was just noise. Jordan stepped forward, his presence commanding attention. This is your mess, he said, his voice cutting through the tension. You wanted her, Ethan. You got her. Now deal with the consequences. His words hung in the air, and I felt a strange sense of pride. He wasn't trying to save me. He wasn't trying to fix everything for me. He understood that I had to fix this on my own. The room fell silent. Emily's face was a mask of frustration and desperation, her anger boiling over. She turned to Ethan, tears in her eyes, and whispered, I thought you loved me. But Ethan's eyes were vacant, his attention elsewhere. I never loved you, he muttered under his breath. I thought I did, but I was wrong. The finality of his words hung in the air like a death sentence. Emily stumbled back, her hands shaking as she collapsed into a chair. She had spent so much of her life trying to hold on to things that weren't hers. But now, even she could see the truth. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered everything, how she had stolen my gown, how she had stolen Ethan, how she had taken everything I had given her and still wanted more. She had been my sister, but she was never my ally. And then I remembered something else. I had lived a lifetime of regret, of mistakes, of being the one who always gave in. But this time, I had chosen differently. I had chosen to let go, to walk away, to take back control. I wasn't going to let them destroy me again. I turned to Jordan, my heart still pounding, my thoughts racing. The moment I had been dreading was finally here. But instead of fear, there was something else, something that felt like power. I had faced my demons, I had lived through my past life, and now, I was free. We're leaving, I said, my voice steady, my grip tightening around Jordan's hand. He nodded without a word. And for the first time in both our lives, I felt like we were in this together, not as enemies, not as pawns in some twisted game of power, but as partners. As we walked out of the room, the air seemed lighter, like the weight of the past had finally lifted from my shoulders. Emily's cries faded into the distance, and the last thing I heard was Ethan's voice, calling after me. But I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The journey ahead was uncertain, but for the first time, I knew I was no longer a victim. I was a woman who had been broken, but who had rebuilt herself from the ashes. And with Jordan by my side, I knew we would rise. Together, we would make our own path. The story of the Hale and Stone families ended that night. But for me, it was only the beginning.